Good, soft, and tender morning to you, Suzanne Joy.
Good morning, Deborah Leanne. Today is Gene Key 37. We're talking about Gene Keys written by Richard Rudd. And this whole key is about family alchemy. And there's different states of consciousness that he discusses. And we're talking about the shadow state of weakness, that then is the gift state of equality, which then is the acidic state or the high essence of tenderness.
So, we're going to, in our very short time chat this morning, coffee chat this morning, take us through the human experience of weakness to tenderness. And then, but noticing, and this is what it took me several times listening to this to get through this thick skull, is that it's through that gift of equality. I would have thought it would have been the other, like through tenderness we get to, anyway. So, this is going to be fun to talk about. And I think we're both feeling the heaviness of coming off of this last gene key, which was so big. And so we're, we were just discussing how we need to drop in and get centered and find our essence because we're feeling kind of tossed about by the world right now, the essence of what's going on in the world. So let's just invite everyone who's listening, including ourselves, to receive this moment. Talk about a beautiful feminine quality as receptive, right? Receive the support of gravity holding us so that we can just relax our body into being the grounded, held space by Mother Earth. Gaia has got us. And just dropping in, feeling the support of our chair, feeling our feet, having that connection, the electromagnetic connection with the earth. Noticing our breath might shift. Noticing that there's a stillness for me that's coming, just kind of like just wafting like a soft breeze through my system, as opposed to the frenetic energy of what's going on outside in the world. And if we put one hand on our belly with our thumb in our belly button and just cup around that beautiful lower power center of ours where we balance, seeing if our breath can reach all the way down in there and finding our power here. This is our personal power center. And beautifully, there's a mix of energy in there that is the feminine, holding, quiet, dark essence of Mother Earth and the divine essence, the energetic the essence, the light that we are. So we're this physical and divine presence, but we very often tend to lean towards one or the other. Out in the ethers, hanging out with the angels or the higher realms, or being so stuck in the heaviness of the earth. So, what if we were to add both of those energies into our cauldron and find the beauty of the mix of that, the soup that's created, the essence that is uniquely ours? And that's what brings us to our personal power, our unique genius, which can only be unlocked when we're in community with others. We don't have it all ourselves, which is why we connect in this way to remember who we are, what we're here to do in the world. And so we breathe in together and allow ourselves to relax into this beautiful creative essence that we are. Yeah, and remembering that is what will fuel us moving forward today. Well, every day, but at least in this moment. So thank you for doing that. Oh, I needed that. How are you now?
I'm really great. Thanks. I needed that.
we just, it's like I didn't do my morning practices this morning. I did like 1/4 of what I normally do so that I could meet you on time. And I'm like, don't do that to yourself. You need those. So, and that's part of the beauty of being in a commitment or a relationship or the fractal families, which we're going to talk about a little bit, because then we can remember who we are. So appreciate that. So, do you want to start us off on this shadow, which I'm learning to really love, but it brings up a lot of energy for me because I've been working for the last 15 years on feminine energy and how
Mm.
does a woman tap into that, not trying to learn from the masculine realm that we've been taught, but what's ours? Where's our power?
Yeah, it's interesting. The shadow of weakness, it's really about kind of like a resignation letter. What have we settled for in the shadow state?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, what have we what are we settling?
Yeah,
There's
what have we given
there's
up of who we
right,
really
there's some kind of unconscious belief that we don't have the power
are?
or that we're powerless.
Mm-hmm.
And so that weakness is perceived, and it's only through our own perception of ourselves. That's it.
No,
So it kind of ties in with last week's about victimization. Like, where are we cutting off from source?
yeah. What are we a victim to? And
Yeah.
what just came to me is I think the more and more, especially like my daughters, that are a couple generations behind me, but I mean, like, we work so hard on being seen as women and being strong and powerful women, but there's still a victimization by media.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at how one more than the other of my daughters is more um, controlled, if you will, by the media, which to me is a masculine essence. It's taking advantage of the feminine, it's manipulating, and it's not in service. I mean, it can be, but very often that um, drive to be seen, to be viewed as sexy, to be viewed as whatever, beautiful by standards that are part of the media. I'm just going to call it, it's general media. There's we're still in service to that.
Mm.
you know I mean, I am too. Like, we were talking about putting lipstick on before we got on here today. Like, what is that for? Is it for anybody else or is it
Oh,
for us?
it's for me.
Yeah, for me it is because it keeps me from chewing my lips. But I also wonder, is there I still have that it's important to be beautiful, it's important to be seen as a feminine, womanly presence, whatever that is. But that kind of was instilled through my ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're not beautiful, you're not valuable.
Oofta. Oofta.
I mean, and that is part of our weakness is we bought into that.
Right.
And which is what I love about our sisters and trans and whoever that's playing with the gender thing is, you know what? It's not about what you think of me. This is me being me. And
Exactly.
that is where women, that shave their head, that do whatever, that don't care about what they're wearing because their essence is defined in other ways. There's still an awful lot of us that are feeling like we have to buy the latest clothes and, all of that looking good.
Well, I think we talked a little bit about it this last week, but just the showing up and feeling all of you. And if you feel like you want to do that, then do it. That's the freedom of it. But
Yes.
feeling like you have to do it, that is like a judgment on yourself. And so I think that's the distinguishing characteristic about it. I mean, when we will go into the other parts of the key of this key soon, but it all does come down back to ourselves.
And our
Be-
choice.
in our
what
choice.
what is right for us. Yeah,
Right.
because no one else, and this is part of the weakness, is we allowed ourselves to be defined by what masculine, by what the career world told us, by what the media world told us, by what. So I think now that the feminine is, let's define, feminine and masculine are not gender based qualities. And this is something that I find is fascinating to me. And what we have tried for people in my generation, where we were taught to be strong and very masculine in our way of moving forward in business,
Mm-hmm.
to be taken seriously. And so, it kind of turns off all of that beautiful relational hidden essence of being feminine that we were naturally born with. And men have that too. And as this is growing, this relational seeing the whole versus the parts, that's the other side of the brain versus the logical science, science taking things apart.
Mm-hmm.
And the feminine has always seen it all, which is why I used to tell my kids, I said, I have eyes in the back of my head. And they're like, I know, you always know what I'm doing. I'm like, yep.
Oh,
So
that's
how do you do
yeah.
that? How do you play with that in a way that is where we honor that unseen strength and power versus the masculine, fight, war, let me fix it problem? What if there's a way to not necessarily fix it, but embrace that?
It's softness, right? It is tenderness. And what is great about it for me when I tap into that, because I came from a very masculine energy, and I like pulled myself out of that whole um paradigm to really go in and figure out how to soften myself
Mm-hmm.
and and really trust my own inner wisdom in my own femininity and my intuition, which is strength,
Yeah.
but it works a very different way. I don't have to blast through something. I don't have to push something up a hill. I'm allowing the energy to shift as I shift in my own consciousness. And there's that balance of, do I take action now? What does my intuition tell me? Not yet. Now, like
Yeah.
there's this much it is much more gentle and kind to the system, as opposed to, this is the road, this is how we do it, tack it, like, okay, that's a very old system.
Yeah, the hustle
Yeah.
thing for me doesn't work anymore. And what I love about that is I feel like I did that. I was this very masculine workaholic. How many hours a week can I put in? How quickly can I climb in my position in the company? All of that.
Right.
And then I got married, and I went all the way over here where I had my husband's income covered my life. That was very strange to me after 37 years of having to make all my own money since I was 11 years old to pay for
Right.
haircuts and everything. Oh my God, I had a shared bank account and a house. And so, but having the children kind of brought me back into this, oh, because my heart was opening and I realized I had a purpose beyond being a corporate workaholic person
Right.
and just this stay at home, cared for. I felt like such a not a paid sex partner, but that kind of like that. It was like a being kept woman. It was like so weird. And it's also what Richard Runn talks about. He said, one is the yoga. It's very movement oriented, right? Strength based. And the other way of thinking is the tantra, very inner, very meditative, very. So how do we blend those? Because we need them both.
Yeah. I like when he talks about the energy of this key, where he talks about when we're in the seeing the 37th shadow in action, it can result to exhaustion.
Mm,
Whereas when we look at the 40th shadow, which is the programming partner to it, that is fatigue. So fatigue is kind of sucking the energy out of you. Exhaustion is just you've
Been used up. Yeah.
you've done all that you can, right? So I find that interesting, especially when we have fatigue syndrome, right? Um, if we manage our energy, we can, if we witness and acknowledge and appreciate where we put our energy, I think this is where the shift is going to happen for each of us.
Yeah.
And in the repressive nature of this key, it's really ruled by emotions. It's when somebody is like super emotional and they have repressed fears that they have not like really dealt with, yet they make everything flowery on the outside, visioning this humanity that's beautiful, and but they lack a backbone in like standing for themselves
And taking action. Yeah.
and taking action. Right, there's they actually over process emotions and drain others. Like,
Oh, I think I've done that. You know, where I started waking up and I had to like let me where did that how come I why do I do that? And people were like, "Why do you keep asking why do you do that? We don't want to hear it anymore." You know? Oh, okay. So
so
yeah, so that was
that's
the repressive.
that's the repressive nature. The opposite town is the reactive nature, which is just cruel. It just sees the world as unequal, and it just has hardened its heart. It's, it's constricted itself, and um
Yeah.
they, that's where they see a lot of polarity. But it's very common that once someone takes a stand anchored in their heart, that person opens up, because how can you hang out with somebody who's sitting there, holding that space, and like it just
Yeah.
breaks out mm, that fence or that wall.
Breaks it open or
Yeah.
opens it up and softens it. So one of the things that I wrote down because we want to talk about the family alchemy, which I find fascinating that that's what he calls this, is if you think of mother energy, if you think of Mother Earth, it creates a safety and trust. And so very often if you talk to people, they're like, the world doesn't create safety for us. We're not very trusting of what's going on with all of the changes and, all of that's going on. So this is where we get to love ourselves enough to mother those feelings, to mother those parts of ourselves. And I thought that was fascinating because I think very often we just think we have to like harden ourselves and like push through and, you know, hustle or what are some of the other words that they use in business now where you just, um,
Put
just
your nose put your nose to the grindstone.
yeah, just harden yourself off and do that. And I mean, like, I don't want to harden myself anymore. I've been breaking down all these walls around my heart for decades now. Why would I build that back up? So now I think I feel a lot more. And so when I get that exhausted, tired space, how can I love on myself and go, you need a nap? Just take tomorrow off.
Right.
Take some space for you. So do you want to speak to the family piece? Because this was fascinating to me about the family dynamic.
Well, it's the support that we need. But first of all, it's also witnessing the balance within us. And
Mm,
it has to start with yourself and your own self-respect. It just has to.
yeah.
It that otherwise, I mean, it's like you can only love another as much as you love yourself.
Yeah.
And so um that is key. So just acknowledging that and saying, okay, how can I love myself just a bit more? Where are those
By doing
places?
a dropping in
Where
centering like we did earlier. We
Right,
both
where can I
knew we
soften a
did.
little bit more and not be so hard on myself or, beat myself up for not doing something the way I thought it would turn out. Um, so that literally, it's actually, now that I think about it, it is a mothering of ourselves.
You
It's that,
you have called it self-soothing a lot,
yeah, I call
and
it, yeah.
I think that didn't ever really resonate as much until I heard that today when we listened to the 64 ways
Mhm.
about the audio transmission of these gene keys. I mean, he has the written transmission in his book, and then you can purchase the audio for each of the gene keys, which is it's the same terms but a little different transmission because he's speaking them aloud in kind of in a way that he only his poetic way can be. But in there, he talked about the mothering and the family. And
Mhm.
I, the other thing that really stuck out for me is because when I think of family dynamics, I immediately go to the the sore parts, the weak links, the places where our family dynamics are not good. And we always hear that thing about, a family or a team is only as good as the weakest link, right?
Mhm.
That weakest link is what we need to focus on to fix for this team. What if we turn into that weakest link and love on it so much that it is the strength of this family. And I have seen that over and over again. When something happens that's traumatic in our family, we would all turn and be the most amazing, loving unit in service to, healing that person or to attending to that person. And that's fascinating to me because I'm like, I didn't think about it that way before. So after my mother passed away, when all of the fractiousness came back again and we could see everything and the discomfort, isn't that fascinating that if we could find another way to heal on our family,
Mm,
it would heal all of us, right?
right. And really what it comes down to is that that love has to come out unconditionally without any type of strings attached.
Absolutely. Like if you don't heal, mom, we're not going to love you. Well, she did.
Right. Or
Yeah.
or like, yeah. There's no requirement for anything in return. You are just pouring yourself because that's your essence
And that's what we need to do
to
here with
ourselves.
all of those parts of our little family going on inside. So that family alchemy thing, and then taking it bigger and bigger beyond our biological blood families, because we're all genetically connected, right?
Yeah.
How do we heal communities? How do we shift? And I look at that about why I was so called to live in a much more diverse neighborhood than my old neighborhood. I moved 2.5 miles away, but this neighborhood is a mix of ages and sexual orientation and family dynamic, young families and elders and everything in between. And all different kinds of people from different backgrounds and different places on the planet live on this street. How cool is that? And then a part of me that's like, no, I just want to run away and live in the country all by myself. So I'm looking at what is it that feeds me and where is my, and this is what we're here to do, right? If we're here to live our genius, yet we can't do that alone,
Right.
where will we be unlocked to be the most of ourselves?
Right. Hmm.
Like you and your husband moved to be closer to family for a lot of reasons. And it's
Yeah.
not like you see them every day or every weekend, but the fact that you're closer in proximity also has shifted you in different ways.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at finding those connections, those fractal families, and he talks about it moving beyond the tribe to bigger communities, and bigger communities, which someday hopefully it'll be the world, the global community of humanity.
Right.
And that's where the family alchemy is, and that's where equality is. Do you want to speak to that at all? Because
Well,
I think we've talked about tenderness, but we've kind of skipped over the equality part, the gift.
when we awaken that gift within ourselves, in the core principle of it, it's not only support for ourselves, but then we see that link. We see our interdependence, not only to people, but to the planet.
Yes. Well, yes,
And
because
and
they're our family
recognize,
too, right? Yeah.
right, and recognize that is part of our family because it nourishes us and
Hmm.
it sustains us. That's what family is for. And so why would you cut off yourself from that nourishment? It's always here. It's like, how can we learn to open our hearts even further and soften even more? That's that's where I all of a sudden, oof, yeah, so much tenderness right there. Just feeling that love and support.
And looking at one another. And there's a big discussion right now about this dear friend of ours who's 91 years old and still living in her home, big home, and she's got a groundhog issue. And so she's called upon my partner to help her eradicate that because of the damage in the house. So there's this whole thing about, well, we don't want to kill him. So we want him gone, but we want to make sure he won't be put to death and he won't be, so they're like, so there's this desire to take care of that animal, even though it's creating major, like expensive damage to this property. And I'm laughing because, okay, so where do we decide who's more important here? That we're going to destroy his home or her home or which home? So I'm
Yeah.
laughing at how we look at that, but then we'll go out and buy a hamburger, which was also an animal at one time. It's like, so I'm struggling with that. And I think as we move into this place of equality, the gift of this weakness, how do we start noticing my left brain and my right brain need to be together? And I want to share this. I thought about this morning when I was listening to this. I had this image for the longest time inside me of the woman, the feminine essence and the masculine essence standing along my spine, and they were connected, but they had their backs to each other and their arms folded like, yeah, I don't trust you. I'm not so sure I want to be with you. I mean, you're not taking care of me and you're not loving on me the way I want you to. I mean, it was, there was such a war going on kind of between those essences, those parts of me. And what I worked with her too, one of our soul sisters who helped me to see that I could have those two parts of me turn and face each other and look and be together in a way that totally danced. And at the end, they were dancing, right? They were together heart to heart versus back to back. And I'm laughing because I'm like, okay, I can see them again. They're like this versus can I find the equality that both of these parts of me have equal voice, both are necessary, and how can my masculine serve my feminine and vice versa, you know?
Mm, that's a beautiful share. Thanks, Deborah.
Thoughts. Where do we go from here? How do we support people in tapping into that spaciousness of equality versus the clenching of weakness, which closes down our essence, and to visit that tenderness space?
Yeah.
Just did so beautifully when your heart opened and softened.
Yeah. So, how can we soften this week? How can we soften more and love on ourselves a little bit more unconditionally,
Yeah. There was
and
something.
and look at people in the eyes.
Oh, he said that. What a great exercise to connect here in that space where we're looking at each other in the eyes. Oh,
And see what is looking back.
yeah, with tenderness. It's a way to create more of that on the planet. Hmm.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Much love.